Greetings, honorable battle brother.
Brother, today we are talking about the Legion like 5 people at all have talked about ever.
The White Scars!
Yeah.
And their Primarch. Jaghatai Khan, I mean Genghis Khan, I mean Attila the Hun, I mean Genghis Khan!
So, for those of you, may the Emperor have mercy on you, who are learning the lore through us, we make this joke because Jaghatai Khan, Primarch of the White Scars, literally looks like what Genghis Khan probably imagined that he looked like. Beard and all.
Beard and all. He literally was like white. He was Mongolian the Power Ranger. Like, he is the embodiment of what it takes to be Genghis Khan in the 30th millennium.
Yes. We're not even in the 40th millennium at this point. We're 4 episodes in.
Yeah. 5
5
episodes in. Okay, let's talk about this Mongolian son of a bitch in all of his gloriousness. Jaghatai Khan, honored be his name,
Amen.
Was the 5th Primarch, the 5th son made by the glorious Emperor of mankind.
Yes.
He was the Primarch of the White Scar Legion, whose strategies are akin to that of a speedster.
Yes.
In that they must go fast.
Yes.
Sonic the Hedgehog, Barry Allen, the Flash, and then the White Scars in the rate of speed, I would say.
Yes. The White Scars have, okay, so the White Scars, I had a point that I was going to make, and I forgot it, so it'll come back to me.
It's going great already. We're doing fine.
Excellent.
So, Jaghatai Khan landed on the planet of Chagoris. Fun fact, though, we brought this up before, Fulgrim and Jaghatai were supposed to go to each other's planets. So, we were supposed to get a speed-inspired Fulgrim instead of a pretty boy, and we were supposed to get a hard, gruff, chemical wasteland Jaghatai Khan instead of the speedster that we know of today.
Right.
The reasoning, I did some research on this. Yeah. The reasoning, I think I said it was Zinch before, or just some weird warp spaghetti.
Chaos bullshit, I believe you said.
It was actually the laughing god, the Eldar god of memes.
Huh.
Yeah. He did that, having a laugh, I guess. So that's fun. Lord knows why, but he did it.
Well,
so there's that confirmed.
I feel like that happened because if Fulgrim had landed on Mundus Planus, or Chagoris, as it is called, it was referred to as both, we would have just gotten Conan the Barbarian.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. It's for the best.
It's for the best. I would agree.
Yes.
So, like Anisius had brought up, he landed on the planet of Chagoris, which was then classified by the Imperial surveyors as Mundus Planus, which I'm pretty sure just means big plain.
Yes, it does.
Because that's what the planet was. It was a single continent with some mountains, some oceans, and that's it. And then the rest of it was pretty much just plain.
It was very flat.
Flat. Just flat. So the dynamics of this planet were interesting when he landed on the planet. There was a empire that had the technology akin to the Renaissance era, plate mail, primitive firearms, still relying on pikemen and plated cavalry.
Think Imperial China.
Imperial China.
Yeah.
Very good. And this empire was called the Palatine, led by the man named the Palatine. Real naming conventions in the 30th millennium must have been very, very one-sided.
Emperor Palatine.
Yeah, exactly. So Jaghatai Khan was not found by the leader of his planet, however. He was found by a man of the Talskars tribe, in this region called the Empty Quarter, which is essentially where the nomads on the planet lived.
Yeah.
He was found by a man named Ong Khan. Khan meaning, originating actually in our human dimension.
Yes.
Our current timeline, meaning king or chieftain.
Yes.
So the Khan would lead the small tribe, or the large tribe, as it were.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of a primitive power structure.
Yeah. It was Space Mongolia.
It was Space
Except
Mongolia.
Genghis Khan literally fell from the sky.
Yeah, well, I don't know what Mongolians believe, if they believe that Genghis Khan fell from the sky or not. I'm not going to comment on that. It may be true, I don't know.
No, there's a historical context. Genghis Khan... as far as I'm aware, and I will look this up as we continue, but brief history aside, Genghis Khan wasn't really Genghis Khan was very... His story is told back before he was Genghis, back when he was Temujin, as very from humble beginnings. Okay. Where he was essentially born as just... He was related to the chieftain of his tribe through, I believe, adoption. And over the years, he became more and more powerful, and he united the tribes of the steppes.
Very similar.
Yes.
Very similar. You see very direct inspiration here. So, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves there. Jaghatai Khan would then... So, the Khan's father, the adopted father, would later die in a raid by a rival tribe.
Yes.
And this tribe, while being relatively powerful, was no match for a primarch, even a baby one. So we see this kind of trend where the primarchs avenging their fathers or just doing their job, doing their thing, do this thing where they kill every single last member of the rival entity until they are ground into dust. We saw this with the lion. We saw this with
Perturabo.
Fulgrim
Fulgrim
not so much because Fulgrim was a prissy little pretty boy.
Yeah.
So not a whole lot of tension there.
Yeah.
But it's a trend we're going to continue to see.
Yes.
So, upon slaying every man, woman, and child in this murderous, revenge-driven, crazy frenzy, the Khan decapitated the enemy leader and presented his head to his men.
As you do.
As you do. So, the Khan would continue to do this from tribe to tribe, and he would slowly and surely unite the steppe under his banner. He became Jaghatai Khan, or the Khan of Khans, the Kagan. Yes. And he would basically declare war against the other entities on this planet, and he would go forth with his I was gonna say Mongolian, with his horde of cavalry, and he would grind these empires into dust before him.
I'd just like to point out, the way it's set up, it's like he was part of a minor tribe. There were bigger tribes, but at the end of the day, they were basically just king of the they were just king of the flatlands. And so his plan, essentially, once he united all of the people of the flatlands, really, it just seems... No, the thing I was going to mention before was how the fandom article phrases this as follows. From then on, after the previously mentioned grinding to dust of the Kurayed, the enemy tribe who killed his adopted father, he swore to end the infighting and unite everyone, bring peace to the empty quarter. After he had essentially ground the enemy tribe to dust and burned their yurts to the ground. He then proceeded to repeat this process throughout the entirety of the empty plains of this giant singular continent, and taught everyone peace by grinding all of the non-peaceful people into dirt.
And I mean, that there is credit to that line of thinking. Either you accept my way of living, and this is important. This is very important for later in this episode. Yeah. It's either you accept my truth, or you fall as my enemy. Yeah. You're either one of us, or you're none of us. You're fucking dust. Your bones will fucking line the walls of my bone throne. Yes. I don't know where I was going with that.
Bones for the bone
Skulls
throne.
for the skull throne.
Jaghatai Khan, the lesser chaos god.
He might be, I don't know. So, continuing on with our merry journey, Jaghatai would meet several friends along this conquest of the steppe and of the rest of his planet, including Teratugai Usagi. Usagi is what is the only important. He would later become Chief Stormseer.
Okay.
Chengza and Hasisk. All of these would become very influential members of the White Scars Legion.
Right.
So, the ultimate conflict would come with the Palatine Empire, and the massive horde would line outside the capital city, and they said, either surrender and bring me the head of your ruler, or I'm going to destroy this city and kill everybody inside of it. And then the people opened the gates, welcomed the Khan as their new leader, and presented them with the head of the Emperor Palatine. And there concludes the conquest of Chagoris. It took like 20 years of just riding horses around, which is cool, I guess. Yeah. But eventually, Jaghatai Khan became king of Chagoris.
Right.
This did not bode well for... He didn't like this. He was nomadic, and his men were mainly nomadic.
Yeah.
And they did not like the idea of ruling cities.
Yeah.
They were not conquerors.
Yeah. They didn't like having to hold things.
Right. Because that's not the way they were raised. That's not their lifestyle.
Yeah. That's not even what they had to do when they were conquering the rest of the empty wastes.
Exactly.
They would just kind of assimilate other traveling groups of people into their own.
Right.
Also.
And I feel like this was also an issue that in real Mongolian history that they faced, because they weren't used to, once they made it into Kievan Rus and Eastern Europe, they were coming across people in giant castles, and they didn't want to hold giant castles.
Yeah.
That's not who they were.
Yeah. And so that is part of why the original Golden Horde of Genghis Khan broke up.
Right, exactly. there wasn't enough momentum to stabilize it.
Yes. Also, I just want to point out that the Palatine found out about the Khan because the Palatine's son was leading a hunting band, and they caught Jaghatai, and then the only thing that came back was the head of the emperor's son, and a note saying, "I am the captain now," in so many words. And
That's
so
amazing.
that's how the Khan and the Palatine Empire started fighting. And so the Palatine Empire, as I'm reading from the wiki, the Palatine Empire was not equipped to fight them because the horde of Jaghatai was made to fight in like mobile style attrition warfare, where basically they ran the Palatine army around the wasteland, they would survive off of the land and off of their stored food and skirmishes. And the Palatine Empire was unaccustomed to this because, again, big fort, like we stay in a fort, we wait you out. And so eventually that's how they were able to destroy the Palatine's army almost to the last man. And then at that point, that was when Jaghatai was crowned the Khagan. And that was when he marched his giant army to the palace of the Palatine and was like, "Give me the head of the Palatine, or I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do what I did to your army and what I did to all the people who didn't side with me before to you." And they cut the Palatine's head off and gave it to him on a spike.
Yep. Very, very violent.
Yes.
But not untelling for this setting.
Yes.
So, luckily, they would not have to hold this planet for very long, because roughly 6 months after they finished conquering the planet, the Emperor arrived in his giant gold everything.
Because giant shiny space jihad.
Exactly. The Great Crusade was kicking off at this point, and the Emperor was keen to find his lost sons, and he found Jaghatai. Now, while we're talking about Jaghatai and the Emperor meeting, let's talk about his legion and what they were up to.
Right.
So they were originally called the Star Hunters.
Right.
Isn't that fun? Because guess what? They would hunt the stars. Good one, Emperor. Very good. They were basically the Imperium's pathfinders.
Right.
They would explore, they would look, they would scout out.
They were advanced scouts.
They were advanced scouts. And this is what they did. They broke off into tiny clusters, and they pretty much just went in different directions. And it was, kind of, you could see the Gene Seed kind of playing a role there.
Yeah.
Because Jaghatai himself, that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He wanted to explore. That's what he was a scout. He was an outrider.
Yeah.
He wasn't a march and file
Yeah.
army like every other legion at this point.
Yeah.
So the Emperor would find Jaghatai along with Horus. Horus would be the first primarch to meet Jaghatai Khan, and they would kind of bond. It was the Horus was really the only primarch that Jaghatai Khan felt comfortable around, because they both had similar interests. You know, the White Scars and the Luna Wolves were both very attack-driven.
Yeah.
They liked the ceaseless onslaught that happened in a dead charge.
Yeah.
You know, they found a kinship in this.
Yeah.
And Horus obviously was the Emperor's charisma.
Yeah.
So of course they liked each other.
So if Jaghatai
Go ahead.
Khan, well, no, if Horus is the Emperor's charisma, and the Lion was the Emperor's pride, and Fulgrim was the Emperor's perfectionism, and Perturabo was one half of the Emperor's creativity and his social and his lack of understanding and connection to the little people, then Jaghatai Khan was what? His desire to go out and see and conquer new things?
His desire to, his ambition to explore. I'm not 100% on that, but from what I gather.
No one's 100% on
is-
anything. This is 40K.
Fair enough, yeah. But yeah, that's what I would say, is his adventuring.
Yeah.
You know, the Warhawk lived a very adventurous life.
Yeah.
He strove to be, you know, a warrior king, you know.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but you know what I mean.
I want to go out and see and conquer a bunch of new stuff. There has to be
Beautiful
more.
savage.
Yeah.
The beautiful savage, I would say.
Yes.
And that's what the Khan embodied.
Yes.
So, at the time of their meeting, the Emperor and Jaghatai Khan, Jaghatai Khan knew he had a choice. It's either he joined the Emperor and upheld the Imperial truth, or he got ground to dust. This was not an easy decision to make, because Jaghatai Khan is not a servant.
Yes.
He does not placate himself before other people. He is a master. He is an independent force. So
He
when
is
the
the
Emperor
one who
says,
asks people to be crushed.
exactly, he isn't the crushed. He isn't the one underfoot.
Yes.
So when the Emperor basically demands this, he, you know, Jaghatai Khan was kind of like, I don't want this, but I know if I say no, I'm going to die and all of my friends are also going to die. There is no negotiating. This is either a vassal or you're dead.
Yeah.
And this was very off-putting for Jaghatai Khan. So, only like a couple of weeks or months after this engagement, the Emperor put him in charge of his legion right away.
Yeah.
This was unheard of, because there was always like an adjustment period with primarchs. And there was always like time to like adjust to the Imperial truth,
Yeah.
and to know your men, to lead them.
Yeah.
Jaghatai Khan didn't give a fuck. He said, put me in charge of my men right now, and then the Emperor did. But first, his men had to be gathered.
Yes.
Because they were off in different sections of the universe exploring for the Imperium, and So time passed, the White Scars assembled, or the Star Hunters assembled on Chagoris, and through a ritual ceremony of cutting yourself, white scar, scars, get it?
Yes.
Good. They became the White Scars.
Yep.
Stupid. Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, it's actually really cool. Also, brief question. Jaghatai Khan was not spawned with a jet bike, correct?
Correct.
He rode around on a horse.
He rode around on a horse. It was a limited fucking technological world that Chagoris was.
So they just grew him a giant horse?
No, I mean, he didn't land. That's a good point.
Because what I'm saying,
did they find a
he's
horse?
Jaghatai Khan. He has to. He rode around on a horse for the entirety of his campaign, if not several horses. But, so it has, that raises a question. What kind of fucking horse is big enough to carry how big is Jaghatai Khan again?
Large, like 12 feet.
A 12-foot tall, 800-ish pound dude with armor and a big sword and a bow and all that other fancy stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question that I never thought of, nor do I want to think of. Moving on. So, the White Scars would obtain this not so nice connotation to them.
Right.
That they were savage.
Right.
Even way into the Siege of Terra,
Right.
at the end of the fucking Horus Heresy, like 3 centuries after the White Scars were like initiated,
Right.
they were still called savages because they came from a nomadic lifestyle. This was very, very stupid. They were not savage. Sure, they were brutal. There is a difference between savagery
and brutality
and barbarism
So,
and fucking being brutal.
So here's a thing that I noticed after reading. So the White Scars also had this thing where they would focus on, in their off time, aside from, grooming their excellent mustaches, they would also write poetry. They write poetry and songs and engage in singing.
Yep.
Like, regular people would do.
Yep.
Compared to, I don't know, the Space Wolves, who basically just get into giant drunken shit fests.
The world
leaders who are just they don't really have days off, because time where they're not fighting is just time where they're just screaming at each other at maximum volume. Probably in Greek.
Yeah. So, they had this built reputation as barbarians, and they were likened to the World Eaters and the Space Wolves. But this was untrue. They were more deliberate. They were more caring.
Yeah, they were more like people and not like cartoon caricatures of not just big red or blue angry men.
Right.
They were where the space wolves were formed by, like, the Space Wolves were formed around Lehman Russ's army raiding party frat party group thing, and the World Eaters were formed out of all the people that Angron hated because they weren't his actual friends.
Yeah.
Compared to the White Scars, which were formed essentially as just a straight up tribe of people, just like a tribal army. So there's the White Scars were unified in the traditions of the planet. That Jaghatai Khan, we can assume that was the tradition that he did, the ritual that he performed with the various groups of the Star Hunters, was the ritual that he would perform when he would unify a tribe that he would annex back when he was taking over the Empty Wastes. So there would be like a different kind of connection between the White Scars and the Space Wolves.
Right.
There's my tangent for the evening.
Okay. So, let's talk about his relationship with other Primarchs and the White Scars' relationship with other legions.
Right.
So obviously, like I mentioned before, the Khan and Horus got along quite well. That means, the White Scars and the Little Wolves shared some kinship.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, the Khan and Magnus the Red also got along kind of well. Not super, super well.
Yes.
Because Magnus was a nerd,
right.
and who wants to hang out with nerds when you're Genghis Khan?
That's true. But they also like space. They both have space wizards that they think are cool.
Yes, we are going to talk about that next for sure.
Yes.
One person he did not like, two people he did not like, were Mortarion of the Death Guard and Lehman Russ of the Space Wolves. So, the Khan and Mortarion did not get along. One of the reasons for this was the White Scars' utilization of space wizardry,
right.
of warp spaghetti.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a moment, though. He did not like Lehman Russ because he was savage, brutal, brute with no moral code whatsoever, as Lehman Russ was the Emperor's executioners.
Yes.
So, let's talk about space wizards.
Yes.
So, within the White Scar Legion, there were space wizards, let's just call them. They were called Storm Seers.
Yeah.
And these Storm Seers were literal space wizards. They harnessed the power of the warp, which they knew to be the warp, I might add.
Right.
They were the only ones out of all of these motherfuckers who understood that the warp was full of demons that will eat your fucking soul. None of these other sons of bitches understood this. And this would kick them in the ass repeatedly at the end of things.
Who?
All of them!
Okay.
Fucking Magnus, fucking Wolf King Fenris Boy, fucking Lorgar, all of them.
So, I would like to point out that I feel like it's also like it's a cultural thing, where the Storm Seers are not really wizards, so much as they are shamans. Because they're based off of, the rune priests are technically shamans, but I feel like...
Yes. But the Storm Seers understood where their power came from.
Yeah.
They didn't lie to themselves and say that it came from their fucking planet.
Yeah.
That they were harnessing the elemental powers of Fenris.
Yeah.
Because that's what the rune priests said, and they were dead fucking wrong.
So yes, there's the big one. Because once
the big one.
Because once once you understand that you're working with horrible warp spaghetti demons, then you kind of end up being a little more responsible about it.
Yes. And now's a good time to actually mention, so these Storm Seers walked the path of it was like the path of heaven, they called it.
Right.
Where they knew the limits of their power,
right.
and they wouldn't dare extend beyond this because they understood that there are things lurking in the warp that will eat my face. Other legions, however, did have similar ideas when it came to their Librarius or their Space Wizards, whatever they called them. The Librarius of the Dark Angels followed the hexagrammaton, whatever that was.
Big fancy shape-a-majig.
Yeah, from that episode we had before. Go listen to that if you haven't already.
Yes.
So they would walk like this weird path. They would literally walk themselves out of like a conniption fit.
Yeah.
If they felt overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What else am I thinking of? The Psychers of the Thousand Suns had these things called enumerations, where they basically put themselves into different mantras to control the rage or the turmoil inside of them, so that they don't get overwhelmed in utilizing the warp.
Right.
Or the Great Ocean, they called it, because
they all call it something different.
Yeah, they're all a little different.
Yeah.
That was the Librarius rant.
Yeah.
So, while we're talking about the Librarius and the Storm Seers, let's talk about the Council of Nicaea, which we have not addressed yet.
Yes.
So the Council of Nicaea was basically a giant conference that the Emperor held. It was essentially the trial of Magnus the Red.
Yes.
What it came down to. But its original purpose was to determine whether or not Psychers had a place in the Legiones Astartes, in the Space Marine Legions. obviously it was a fucking rubber stamp kangaroo court. They all knew that the Emperor was going to say they aren't allowed fucking stop using the warp, because the Emperor knew, without telling anybody, that the warp was going to be the downfall of humanity. The White Scars and the Khan did know this, though, and the Khan argued with the Emperor ad nauseum about how you can't not tell people what's happening with the warp, with chaos, because the Khan understood this.
Yeah.
He knew what was happening. So by not telling people, you were living a lie.
Yeah.
And that lie set you apart as a liar, and therefore not worthy to follow. Who would willingly follow a liar?
Mm-hmm. And
this is a legitimate point.
I have one better.
Okay.
So, the reason Jaghatai Khan set himself, because once Jaghatai Khan and the Stormseers understanding where they draw their power from, how it works, how to control it, how to talk yourself, how to essentially meditate yourself out of it, that's something that can only come with exposure to it. It's not as opposed to Magnus, at this point, the Council of Nicaea ends basically with the Emperor saying, no, chaos is bad, stop that shit. Except, it's basically just, Magnus, stop that shit. The rest of you do whatever. You're not, it's fine. So, Magnus, being a nerd...
not really, but yeah.
Magnus, being a nerd, is like, you can't tell me what to do, I'm going to go do all the research. And so that's when he starts dabbling with real interdimensional warp fuckery. And so, comparatively, if the Emperor had been more, say, restrictive, as opposed, instead of just being like, no, it could be like, yes, but. And so if there had been just a little bit of succession, chaos, like, the use of warp magic being regulated and studied and controlled and having multiple fail-safes and understanding based on what we know works and what we know doesn't work, and we make this kind of, we regulate the warp fuckery so as to ensure that the warp fuckery does not go out of control by prohibiting it entirely. So basically what I'm saying is, Jaghatai Khan and the Stormseers, knowing how chaos... If everyone knows where they get their chaos magic from, how to control it, how to stop it, then it would have things probably would have gone a little better.
Yes, things definitely would have gone better.
Yes. Prospero would still be here.
Prospero would not be a burning wreck. Okay, so we're saying, he disagreed with the Emperor about lying.
Yeah.
He felt a kinship to Horus. He didn't like being a servant.
Right.
So we're saying all these things, and you're probably thinking to yourself, so these guys are traitors, right? They turned away from the Emperor the first chance they got, right? Well, I think they would have, if Jaghatai Khan was a little more realistic. So let me explain what I mean by this. Jaghatai Khan lived by a very strict code of honor.
Right.
Very strict code of honor. And by pledging himself to the Emperor, he was the Emperor's guy. Like, till his death. Despite the reservations he had and the secrets he shared about not wanting to be, he had to maintain. He saw the use of chaos as extremely dishonorable,
right,
and would never ally himself to people who utilize it as a weapon.
Right.
So, we're saying all this, what happened to the White Scars during the Horus Heresy? So, there was a massive battle at a planet called Calth that we'll talk about when we get to the Ultramarines or the Wordbearers. I can't remember which comes first, so it's going to be the Ultramarines because they're the 13th Legion,
right,
or Lorgar is the 17th.
Right.
So we'll get to that then. But the result of this giant battle was a giant warp storm that separated most of it pretty much cut the galaxy in half.
Right.
And you could not communicate through this warp storm at all. Or, it was like garbled.
Yes.
There wasn't really getting through it. So while this, they called it the Ruin Storm. While this Ruin Storm was descending upon the galaxy, and the heresy revealed itself to be a thing, the White Scars were just getting garbles. They were just getting little bits of information. Most of it was wrong. And, you know, there wasn't a clear answer.
Right.
All they heard, though, was that Russ attacked Magnus and burned Prospero to dust. And that apparently either Russ was a traitor,
or Magnus
Boris was a traitor, Magnus was a traitor. He had no fucking clue. He was getting all of this information.
Yeah.
All of this white noise, and he could not tell what was happening. So, Horus communicated with Jaghatai, saying, you need to bring the Wolf King back in line. You need to bring my judgment as War Master. I'm telling you to put the wolves back in line after the result of Prospero.
Right.
And the Khan did not want to do this without knowing what he was walking into. So he found the Space Wolves fleet after the Battle of Prospero, after the fucking slaughter at Prospero, I should say, because goddamn.
After the glassing of Prospero.
Exactly. So he found the fleet of the Space Wolves in open combat with the Alpha Legion, and fucking Jaghatai Khan was like, what's going on? He didn't know who to fire on, who to position themselves with, and the Alpha Legion obviously sensed this. So the White Scars Legion positioned themselves at a location, and on the edge of the system, the Alpha Legion was coming into the system.
Right.
So the White Scars fleet was positioned, and across the system edge, they see the Alpha Legion coming in piecemeal.
Yeah.
Two cruisers, one ship, two ships, kind of arranging a fleet.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what was happening. So they kind of just stalk towards the Alpha Legion. And the Alpha Legion kind of counter-stalk. And they both kind of move towards each other. And he didn't know what was happening. And this kind of continued for a while until the Alpha Legion made themselves known. So,
in an uncharacteristic move, the Alpha Legion made a play.
We could talk about that in the Alpha Legion episode, or should we talk about it now?
How relevant, how important would it be if we talked about it now?
So, kinda relevant. Not really, because it's really more about a character piece and a theory that's been going around.
So let's save that for the Alpha Legion episode then.
Yeah, we'll get it to the Alpha Legion episode.
Just maintain some kind of consistency.
Yeah. The Alpha Legion fired on the White Scars, and the White Scars basically fucking like a sea of minnow, whatever, a shoal of minnow, just scatter.
Yeah.
They fire, they fight, whatever. Now, Jaghatai knew where people stood.
Yeah.
He got a communication from Rogel Dorn saying you need to come back to Terra now to help defend the throne world against those motherfuckers who are coming to burn it down.
Right.
So, it went on, the Horus Heresy went on, the White Scars would harry and harass the demons of the Ruin Storm and the Traitor Legions making their way back to Terra.
Yeah.
So, we're skipping over a little bit, but they eventually made it back to Terra before the siege kicked off. And they stood with Rogel Dorn, and later on, Sanguinius would also come.
Right.
As the defenders of the planet. So, excuse me. So, you could see kind of the siege of Terra, right?
Yeah.
You know it was a giant fuck-off siege.
Mm-hmm.
Perturabo and the Iron Warriors would be the vanguard against Rogal Dorn and his Imperial Fists. And these two forces would kind of teeter back and forth. Where you don't really see fitting into this picture are the Horse Lords of Chagoris. Because they obviously like open combat,
Yeah.
they like strike and fade,
Yeah.
they like delaying and harassing and skirmishing. There's not much room for that inside of a siege.
Yeah.
So they kind of did it wherever they could. There was a part in, I'm going to say it's the First Wall, one of the novels in the Horus Heresy, where the Mechanicum, the Dark Mechanicum, is setting up siege works
Right.
outside of the First Wall,
Right.
outside of the, the Khan said, I'm going to go attack that, Dorn, okay? Cool. And Dorn was like, wait, don't do that. And the Khan was like, cool, yeah, I definitely won't do that. I'm gonna go do that. And he rode out with like a third of his legion, which is like, honest to God, like 30,000 men. And he just struck at this fucking thing. They like flew over it. It was cool as shit. If you haven't read the book, please read the book, because goddamn was it described in a cool way. But they harassed and harried as much as they could.
Yeah. Well,
And that's what they did the entirety of the siege, as far as we know, up to the point where I'm familiar with.
okay. So, personal question, like personal opinion thing. Wouldn't it be useful
Yes.
if a siege is being fought? Wouldn't it be useful to have an army that essentially goes and just harasses, like Perturabo orbital dropping giant ass forts? Wouldn't it be useful to have like a mobile detachment showing up and just kind of throwing shit at the forts and disrupting the forts, so that way you can pound at them with artillery cannons?
Absolutely, and that's sort of what was happening, to a limited degree.
Right.
The reasoning why the White Scars weren't utilized to their full potential was because they did not have the manpower to just throw shit at the enemy.
Yeah.
The enemy literally numbered in the countless because of the Neverborn, because of the demon allies.
Right.
You had a very finite amount of men during the Siege of Terra. And they could not
spare
risk to have men on the outside of the walls.
Yeah, they couldn't spare skirmish fights with a fort. Which is why Jaghatai Khan, of course, leads contingents of like a third of his whole army to go do one thing.
Yep.
Just like...
It was cool as shit, alright?
Just like...
That's what matters.
This... Rogal, I'm going to go strike I'm going to go strike the artillery base. No, don't do that. And you just hear... Off in the distance is 30,000 motorcycles. Just go screaming Mad Max style toward it as, like, Rogal Dorn is standing there. They're already halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like I said, they did launch a significant amount of hit-and-run strikes.
Yeah.
They just weren't utilized to their full potential, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, once the siege was over, they obviously took part in the Great Scouring, because when does a hunter ever let his prey get away?
Remind me again what the Great Scouring was? I'm not sure if we talked about that.
So, once the battle was over, once the siege was over,
Right.
and the siege was lifted by the Lion, the Wolf King, and whoever else was
Rogal
there.
Dorn?
No, Gilliman. Oh, poor Gilliman. Once the siege was lifted by them, the Great Scouring was the event that took place where the remaining legions basically punched the traitor legions so hard in the face they flew back to the Eye of Terror.
Oh.
And it was basically them harassing them and fighting with the traitor legions until they were pushed into the Eye of Terror.
Huh. I believe you may have like mentioned that in passing of how like the Iron Warriors were sent to Medrengard and how
Yes,
like the fates of the two Chaos Legions we've spoken of already, but we haven't really talked about the Great Scouring.
Right, and that's pretty much what that was.
Okay. The Great Scouring was basically just the equivalent of throwing rocks at them until they run back home.
Yeah. Pretty much. And most of the rocks hit them in the face perfectly.
Yes, because they're primarchs.
Right. So, I believe so. The Horus Heresy done. Arch Traitor was dead.
Right.
The Emperor was entombed on the Golden Throne.
Right.
This we know.
Yes.
So a couple years after, the White Scars begrudgingly accepted Robo Gilly Boys Codex Astartes, and the chapter split into and the Legion split into chapters.
Right.
We'll talk about successor chapters in their own dedicated episode. The White Scars kind of fell from relevance after this point.
Right.
Except, unfortunately, the disappearance of Jaghatai Khan.
Yes.
So, upon returning to Chagoris, I think this was like 70 years after the end of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, about.
The White Scars returned home to find everybody dead and gone, and they didn't know what the fuck happened until they saw the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, and retreating with a shit ton of slaves. And Jaghatai, not very happy, fucking suicide rushed into a warp portal to fight these fuckers on his own terms because he had the balls to do so. Jaghatai would fall into the webway, excuse me.
Yes, it's legally distinct from the warp, so that way the elves don't get super raped by Slanesh.
Yes, exactly. He would basically fall into the webway, disappearing forever.
Yes.
Not being heard of or seen of since. The most prominent theory is that he is alive and well.
Yeah.
And that he is currently running circles around the Drukhari in Kamara and the webway.
Yeah.
Just fucking with them the whole time.
Because
who would do better at fucking pursuit tactics than Jaghatai Khan himself?
Because you have to understand, we haven't talked about the Dark Elves yet, but an essential tactic of the Dark Elves is hit and run, and Jaghatai Khan is also good at hit and runs. So it's entirely possible to assume that Jaghatai Khan is running around on what is essentially the ultimate super monster truck jet chopper, wielding a sword, cutting elves in half, and on a giant Mad Max style space motorcycle fight through the literal infinite void.
Yeah. Yes, and doing quite well on his own. The White Scars would pretty much, I don't think there's been any written pieces about the White Scars specifically in the 41st millennium or the current setting.
Right.
But it is very strongly hinted at that the Khan is still alive and that he will be returning at some point. I was sharing with Anisius before the starting today how most likely he is probably the second or third Primarch that will be returning. After the Lion, most likely, probably Dorn or Corvus Corax, and then most likely the Khan himself. So hopefully we see more from him and his sons. As always, you can never tell with Black Library and Games Workshop because they obviously go where the money is, and I don't blame them. That's the nature of it all.
Yeah.
But some new and up-to-date lore about the Khan wouldn't kill him.
Yeah.
But whatever.
All four of us White Scars fans would be very happy.
All four of us. Yes.
So, if I may offer a brief analysis.
Yes, of course.
So, I believe the thing I was going to mention before is how was a question having to do with both the Khan and Chaos, where how Corvus, we mentioned in the video discussing the Emperor and the Primarchs, how Corvus becomes a literal fear demon as he runs around in the warp trying to rip Lorgar's head off and eat it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, would it be safe to assume that, at some point, heralding Jaghatai Khan's return, there's going to be, fleeing Dark Elves, is what I'm saying. Point I'm trying to make. The Eldar have a legend, and that legend starts to manifest in chaos as well. Because...
So, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. Because...
I don't think so.
Okay.
mainly because the Dark Eldar cut themselves off from the warp.
Right.
And therefore their thoughts no longer, in the webway, no longer have as much of an impact because they aren't as connected. So, like, yes, there may be, like connotation to Jaghatai Khan hunting these fuckers down in the warp. But I don't think they're gonna perpetuate Jaghatai Khan into a goddamn, like, fear demon. As cool as that would be.
Like, just Jaghatai Khan shows up as, like, a full half-D, like a greater prince of Mad Max movies.
Right. Yeah. That would be cool to see.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't see it happening due to the nature of the Drukhari's connection with the warp currently.
Right.
And lack thereof.
Okay.
Because if they were connected to the warp still, Slash would just fucking snap them out of existence.
Yeah. So, one more thing about the Storm Seers, because I completely forgot about them and how they're the only ones who know how their powers work.
Right.
And why is it that it's assumed at this point that the Thousand Sons at least understand that their powers come with the effect of vomiting demons.
So, no.
What?
Not really.
Huh.
So, I don't think the Thousand Sons believed that there were malignant and malevolent forces in the war.
Okay.
I think that they literally called it the Great Ocean.
Right.
I think they literally thought it was an ocean.
Right.
In which, in meaning that there was nothing purely evil about it. It was just nature.
Right.
It was just things surviving. So the Thousand Sons use these things they call tutelaries. Tutelaries?
Okay.
Tutelaries?
Tutelaries.
Where, that's the word. Where they were literal demons that they summoned into the material.
Right.
That they thought were like servants. Well, fun fact, they weren't. They were fucking demons. And during the Battle of Prospero, their demons would possess them when they fell out of their enumerations. So, fun fact, Thousand Sons, they were fucking demons.
So, I feel like the different interpretations see it like the Thousand Sons and the Thousand Sons and the Storm Seers kind of interpret the concept of quote-unquote the Great Ocean differently.
Yes.
Where it would be like the Thousand Sons interpreted as like a great, calm, placid ocean with like there's stuff swimming in it, but it's not really dangerous. Whereas the Thousand Sons being from a big, flat, plains land feral world for the most part, being like nomad tribesmen understand that like there's never nothing out there. There's always something out there, and sometimes that something is bigger and hungrier than you are.
Right.
So it's like...
And it will fuck you to death.
Yes. So it's like the metaphorical understanding of like, it's a big, of a storm. There's storm seers. They're based around the shaman cultures of the planet. So it's like, so it's less about like exploring a great ocean and more like harnessing this dangerous thing and understanding this thing is dangerous. It's dangerous, it's powerful, but if you use it correctly, you can crush your enemies.
Yes.
And so it's like, that's the interpretation that the Storm Seers had of the warp, as opposed to the Thousand Sons who believed in the Great Ocean, and the Rune Priests who believed that the screaming, howling nightmares that's just the soul of the planet, man.
Yep, definitely. The thing that says, I'm gonna fuck you to death. it's just the planet, man. Planet's a little angry today, yeah?
It's kind of cranky. Maybe we need to, we have not poured enough ale into the nearest canyon. That should fix it.
Yes, that should
The
fix
planet
it.
needs a drink, bro.
The planet's a little thirsty, man. Top its drink off.
Continue.
With that, I would say that is the Khan of Khans and the White Scars.
Yeah.
Pretty much summed up. That's them.
There's a bunch of they should. There's a lot of There's a lot of stuff talking about them as like essentially as a so and so featuring the White Scars.
Yeah.
That's really about it.
Yeah, they're very background players.
Yeah, which is sad.
Probably to their own want.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be in the limelight, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, because
So, like,
you can't really
I get it.
scare your enemies by running really fast at them if they're expecting someone to run really fast at them.
Exactly.
Because that's the essential
Yes.
part of hit and run skirmish warfare. They can't
Right.
know you're coming until you're close enough where they can't stop, or they can't get ready fast enough.
Exactly. And I do like the White Scars interpretation of fear and death, where you should laugh in its face and embrace it like a brother.
Yeah.
I like that message, and
Yeah.
you know,
It's much better than like every other interpretation of why we fight.
yeah,
Because
Yes,
every
exactly.
legion has the why we fight.
yes,
The why we fight the White Scars is because we're good at it. Because we're good at it and because it's fun.
because it's fun, because it is fun.
Yeah.
And that is what life should be.
Yeah.
Fun. Speaking of fun, next week's episode, the Space Wolves. Space Wolves are fun.
Yep. Now we get to make
Right?
now
It's cold.
Now I get to do the Swedish accent again.
Oh god.
Yes. I'm going to refer to different space wolves in like as IKEA furniture. Except for Lehman Russ. Or Lehman Roos, I suppose.
Yeah.
And his desire to drink everyone to death.
This happens. This does happen.
Yes. They invented a whole other kind of alcohol because space marines can't get drunk.
Yep. We will talk about that next time.
Yep.
So, thank you for joining us. Always laugh in the face of death. Ave Imperator.
Ave Imperator.